and welcome to the Daft Souls podcast. And today I am joined by Mr. Quinton Smith.
Hello, Matthew.
Hello, Quinton. It's been a while on this podcast.
Sure has.
But we've been running around in other podcast circles holding hands and making daisy chain things to wear in our hair.
I am overloaded with video games that I've been playing. I don't know what I want to talk about first.
Well, first of all, I'm just going to briefly also say that we're joined by Mr. Chris Bratt.
Jesus!
Hello. Sorry, I should have announced myself before then.
He does this a lot.
He was
Just
under
turn
the
up
table.
sometimes.
I know. But yeah, it's a surprise. Chris Bratt, welcome.
Really bad surprise, isn't it? Are we talking video games or are we talking...
We're talking video
Live.
games.
Okay,
We're talking
cool.
video games.
I was going to...
And actually, yeah, let's just, me and you have got something we can talk about in a little bit, but let's
Sure
just
have.
let, I feel bad because Quinton's been carrying around these video games in his soul like a basket full of eggs.
I haven't
to his
had
breast.
any opportunity to talk about them.
Do explode.
Well, all right. I mean, should we cover the stuff we've all played? Should we talk briefly about Sunless Sea?
Yeah, we can talk
Yeah,
about
that
some
thing
of
that
the
we've
scene.
all played. It was... I
all
hear
the-
it's really good.
All the cool people have played, you know.
Simon
Sunless
Parkin
Sea.
really liked it. I remember that.
He did. He gave it a 10 out of 10 for Eurogamer, and
We can't... You're not allowed to reference...
It was the
different
last
scores anymore.
10 out of 10. It probably was, wasn't it?
Reviewed so high,
Oh,
we
it
had
was,
to stop
yeah.
giving review scores.
Simon Parkin,
really
it's like
awkward.
the end of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory where they have the elevator and they explode out the ceiling. Simon Parkin broke the scoring system.
I love the way it's a barometer, and they keep tapping it, going, "Well, it was a 10 for Sunless Sea, but it should be going down. It shouldn't. This game shouldn't be getting a 10. It should be going. It's not going down.
Yeah.
We need to cover it up with a blanket."
So when Sunless Sea is having its high points, I do definitely think it's worth a 10. So yeah, this is the gist of it, Brad.
Yes.
It's based on the world of the Fallen London browser game. Although that was quite jokey, this is very dark, very serious. You are a Z-boat commander in a kind of underworld. It's like sort of Nightmare Before Christmas, kind of very dark yet playful, yet no, it's just really dark again.
London's been taken by bats,
Right.
etc.
Yeah, but then also some really lovely Planescape Torment world warping abstractism. Like,
I'm trying to remember if we've talked about this on the podcast before or not.
I don't know if we have.
I think we definitely have at some point. Maybe I was talking
okay.
about it with Steve.
Oh, maybe I should just shuttle sideways.
No, it's fine. I just
Crab walk
can't.
away from this topic.
Cool. We can definitely talk about it some more. It's fine.
Well, okay. I mean, just to get atop this wobbly pony that I'm now uncertain about riding. Yeah, you go and check on the iPad.
I'll just
Matt.
check while you continue.
Not that this is your podcast or anything.
So,
then
but-
you should know. But
Quinn's, the world's been taken over by bats.
It has, but also there's some really, really creepy stuff, and the game's arguably at its best for someone like me when it doesn't make any sense at all. Because bats you can understand, but what if I told you that the market in London, the Grand Bazaar, is kind of swelling and everyone's worried it's going to absorb the entire city and it won't stop
Well
growing?
then, Quinn's, I just wouldn't be able to understand that one bit.
And that's kind of the point. There's all kinds of glorious stuff. So what it does, and the reason it's such a good sailing game, is that when you set sail off into the map, you don't know what you're going to find. And if you're and actually all of the islands are often penned, like written by different people, because this is a sort of mix of an FTL style ship customization game, and then also a choose your own adventure thingam when you get to islands. But the islands are all written by different authors. They're all radically different. So when you do see the coastline of an island in the distance, you have no idea if, and these are two real things, it's going to be run by spiders or if it's going to be run by postmen.
All the islands are written by different authors.
Not all of them. Basically, a few different authors who you might have heard of, like Emily Short or Meg Jayanth, who wrote 80 Days.
Do you not find that they keep trying to outdo each other and like?
Well, isn't that a great thing?
My island is made of gold and is on fire at all points. Actually, this sounds like a One Piece episode. Let's do it. Let's fucking do it.
That is, but I mean, there is an element of that. Every island is more absurd than the last, not least because the further away you get from London, the more batshit.
Things
Sometimes
get weird.
literally the islands
Nice.
get. I know, right? I was happy with that one. Have we talked about this before?
No, I've talked about it a bit with Steve, but it's fine. It's fine. We talked about it a bit.
Well, you say it's fine, but
But
now
you're
it's
saying it
like,
in that way that it's like,
I'm now
it's
kind
not
of
fine.
not knowing if
no, 'cause-
any sentence I say will be repeating lovely Steve.
No, I don't think so, because, I mean, we get this a lot, and I think when games are really good or really interesting, it's fine to have different people talking about them in the future, because they do talk about them in a different way. I think I'll just be cautious not to repeat myself too much, because I'm the person who's most likely to say the same things.
Well, I'll tell you what then, I will just quick, because we've got so much to talk about today, I'll talk about the one feature I have that I love the most, which is the permadeath. And actually, I'm going to be looking into this next week for a video I'm doing for Rock Paper Shotgun, because I know that this led to a massive fissure during the development of Sunless Sea. And sure enough, it is a problem. This is a roguelike with permadeath, and you can lose your ship and have to start again. And it's also a narrative game with stories and choices. So how on earth do you reconcile those two things, whereby you die and then you have to go through all the story again? And it's a very difficult problem that they've done their best to fix with randomized placement of items and lots of different paths through the island. So even if you go back to the same island, you can do a different thing. But the thing I like the most as a result of this is it becomes a narrative-driven game, like a sort of Mass Effect style thing, where do you want to save the people or butcher them, whatever. Sure, save them. Except in this game, then there are 3 or 4 other options. It's hopelessly morally grey. But here's the thing. It's a game with permadeath, with narrative choices. So, for example, I mentioned an island run by spiders before. This is the example I give everyone. So if you trade with the spiders, if you appease them, hint, you don't want to appease them.
Right.
But you can sort of be taken with a convoy deeper into the island, and you can find this thing called the Tree of Wisdom, I think. And it's a huge statue covered in spider webs, and there's spiders everywhere. There are so many spiders that the game describes them as the noise of their legs on the stones of the island is like pebbles being washed up on a shore. And you have all these options. You can spy on the spiders. You can talk to the priests, who are people who've had their eyes replaced with eggs and all this stuff. And then there's one option at the bottom, which is just burn the tree. And it's just there. And the description of it is something like, there's such an abomination, can't exist. You burn the tree. You think it will light. There are webs everywhere. And then it's so interesting to be playing a narrative game, and you've got like 40 hours invested in this character, and the button is there.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I press this button, I'm probably going to die.
Because I don't know if any of those events actually ever kill you or not, but it's the fear. You're right. It's the fear of what
have you found
happen.
The island, I don't want to give it, the island which is just an old temple, and there's a very big button on it, and the game is very clear you don't want to press it. There's a few which I haven't pressed that I'm positive would kill you.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But you're correct. The fear there is sometimes greater than the actual risk of death. But that's still a selling point. It's incredibly exciting to click on the button that you're sure will kill your character. You're committed to death, but then actually they come through it, and suddenly then you're playing a character who has decided to die, and you've reconciled yourself with that fact. Like, imagine a Mass Effect game where you select the option, it's like, this will kill Commander Shepard, and then the game. And then the game keeps going. It's such an interesting arc for your character.
Really avoid a very spoilery joke there. I know what you mean. Actually, I do love, that's the thing, Sunless Sea's writing is so good. Mm-hmm. It's so good. And but it's just the bits in between are not very good.
Yeah.
As in the sailing and the combat? Or
the combat's terrible. Wait,
because I thought that would be the bit that was the bit I was excited about, because I hear permadeath and...
No. This is the problem is,
less to do with
the thing is, Quinn's basically has just highlighted the one reason why the permadeath is quite good. I think that the permadeath generally is not good and doesn't really work with the game.
Right.
Especially because even though you have this idea that basically, once you get to a certain proficiency level, the idea is you can make enough money to buy a will and have a child. Obviously, that doesn't require money. That requires other things that I'm not going to go into detail here because it's a family podcast. But anyway, you can pass on stuff and it becomes basically lighter, like a bit roguelite if you have the money. Mm-hmm. And once you get a certain level of goodness at the game, it's quite easy to do that. But then it just doesn't make sense, because this thing of your heir gets some of your money, not much, but your heir gets a bit of your money and some of your stuff and some of your stats. But then the world is randomized again. It kind of works within the kind of idea that this place is just weird anyway. Yeah. But it's sort of an odd halfway house, and it kind of feels like the whole heir thing and the whole passing on goods to your next run is less of an interesting mechanic and more of just something to try and soften the blow for the fact that permadeath doesn't really add anything of value.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna argue with the fact that Sunless Sea is the single best game with the single most mediocre padding ever. And I can argue for anything, right? That's how I make my living. But and I could make the argument that the padding does actually lend all kinds of things to the narrative.
It works sometimes, and as you say, the whole permadeath thing and the terrifying options in dialogue trees. That's making lemonade with lemons.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of moments where the mechanic systems that don't really fit or work do actually shine.
Yeah, but you're totally correct that a lot of the time the padding is either too hard and gets in the way of the narrative and you can't actually get that lovely plot that you want, or it's too easy and entirely pointless. That said, I do find myself falling into a lot of traps where even when theoretically I'm fine because I've got so much money, I will just skirt too close to the edge and end up with no fuel, and I'll start panicking. And I don't know. It's fine. It's decent, but the plot is just unreal.
But again,
good.
I found that the problems I faced when I had these moments where like I kind of suddenly realised that terror's too high, or I'm running low on fuel, running low on supplies, is because the actual sailing bit is often so tedious that you just don't notice. And you don't notice that your crew are starving.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I wasn't looking. And I don't know. Yeah, the thing is, though, despite all this, it is still really good.
I mean, there's so much like love for that game. The community will give it some kind of mod just to
Take the boats out.
Sure.
and then you're playing half a game. I mean, it's sloppy, but I mean,
It's difficult, but I think it would have. And you see, this is the difficulty: is if it was just a browser-based text adventure, then it would be better, a bit better in some regards. But I wouldn't have ever played it. As it's a kind of sailing, weird sailing,
that's the bit
creepy roguelike.
It's grabbing me, to be honest.
That's what
I
got
didn't
me
realise.
in.
Yeah.
And it turns out I didn't like some of that stuff. So
it's exactly like 80 Days. It's really depressing how these games have to trick you into reading.
Yeah.
By like adding these components which really aren't good, but they're what our gamer heads latch onto, you know?
I find this kind of intriguing because ever since like 2012 when I really got into XCOM, like I've been craving games that get permadeath right. I think it's when it is done right, it's superb. And so I've been playing Pillars of Eternity this week, and there's basically an Iron Man mode in that game in which if your character dies, it's the end of the game.
Really?
And yeah, I don't think.
I don't think anyone sane should do that.
Well, the thing is, I kind of I dabbled with it just to start with because I was like, oh man, maybe this is the next one, because I wanted to treat the game like a D&D campaign that will kill off your character if you mess up enough. And
I totally see the appeal in this.
The problem is with a game like so if in a D&D game, if your character dies,
looks like the cat who got the cream and the drugs right now.
if in a D&D game, if you die, your character dies, you get brought back in, and the story continues. If you die in Pillars of Eternity, you start again, and you were talking about how the narrative and the decisions you make in Sunless Sea complements the permadeath.
Yeah.
Not so much in Pillars of Eternity because it's exactly the same options every time.
Is it easy to be careful and not die?
No.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I did play it differently because of that. You don't always know how strong an opponent is until you encounter them.
That's the problem. What it boils down to is you don't actually know how strong stuff is until you're fighting it.
But then couldn't you...
And it's really hard to run away.
Yes,
could you
it's
just
incredibly hard to run away.
Could you not initiate the fights?
No.
Well, the thing, once you're in a fight, you have got a chance there to just run away immediately, but you don't know how difficult the enemy is until you actually start using your abilities and seeing how much.
Why would they put this in?
Well, because
it will be for someone that's played it a bunch of times and wants to show off.
it was a stretch goal. There's the
real answer.
That's the real answer. And actually, there was a really interesting thing that they put up. It was like part 2 of their documentary about making the game.
Road to Eternity, is that what it's called?
I don't know what it's called, but it's. I'm not a geek, Chris.
We've already established before this recorded that you guys huge nerds.
No, but basically they said about how they just admitted the fact that the Kickstarter did so well so quickly that they had to just go back into the office on the weekend, and they came up with all the stretch goals in a day. Because they're just
the worst way to design,
and the way in which a lot of Kickstarter stretch goals are created.
Having said that, most of the Kickstarter stretch goals that they've done seem pretty good. I had a look because I was like, well, what else have they put in this? Because I was interested to know what bits of the game had been put in because...
sure.
Well, they knocked Double Fine off the top spot, didn't they? They were the most successful game. I don't know if they still are. They raised like $3 million.
Which Double Fine game?
The original adventure game. Like in terms of the actual Kickstarter campaign outside of that.
I mean, rolling it right back, just so people know what the deal is, like Pillars of Eternity is basically...
Do you think we might have lost those people already?
Hopefully not, but basically it's kind of like, it's very much a game of the Baldur's Gate 2 Icewind Dale sort of era style. It's not using the same engine, but it may as well be. It's like, it's exactly the same in terms of how it functions. Although actually they've sharpened up lots of stuff and modernized lots of stuff and just generally made it a bit less horrible because a lot of those old games were great at the time, but the systems can be a little bit
they used
tricky.
Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition as a rule set, which
Yeah, it
was
was-
like so big.
Do you remember how it's like you got your strength to 18 and then it was 18 like
Oh, God,
10
yeah.
and then 18 20 and then
That was
18
the
40.
dude. Do you remember how when you start those games, you roll your stats like in a D&D
What?
campaign?
Why would the? Why would you ever do that in a video game? People
Except, yeah,
don't
because
do-
the point is in Dungeons
just
and
sat there for
Dragons,
ages.
you roll the dice and go,
That's it.
Well, that's my stats. Here I go. I'm someone with 4 intelligence. I guess I'll be a fighter.
Ooh.
In Baldur's Gate, you click reroll over and over.
Until you get some really good numbers.
Yeah.
And you go,
dumbest
"That's
So
a
it means
great
everyone
character."
pretty much plays that game with, a real good starting selection of stats. So why not just have something that's balanced across the board and get on with it?
that's
Do a
the
video
thing.
game. God
When you
damn
played these games, like it was a mixture of appeal. It was a mixture of kind of being that you were running around with a two-handed sword, turning monsters into exploding balls of gibs, which was fun. And I mean, this Pillars still does that a little bit. I mean, not as much as like Icewind's Dale was pretty much focused on that. It was very much like about the kind of a combat thing. So you've still got that element if you just want to get into the tactical combat. It's pretty good for that. You've got lots of interesting abilities. And I'm finding the combat is like consistently satisfyingly hard. You do have to keep pausing and
like
moving
the
stuff
game
around.
by default makes you do that. When you run into an encounter, it pauses the game. It's like, right, what do you want to do here? You don't just kind of blitz through it like some of the more recent
Yeah.
Dragon Age Inquisition. Why did you go so far away from Origins? I'm not getting
Well, that's
into that
it.
again.
That's it. I mean, if you missed all of the Baldur's Gate stuff first time around, but you played Dragon Age Origins on the PC and you liked, if you got a kick out of basically stuff like carefully arranging your tanky soldiers so that your mage can cast a cone of fire
Yep.
in a way that just gets all of the enemies, but none of your guys, and you kind of like, then Pillars of Eternity really tickles that stuff nicely.
But with the added selling point for people who've played Dragon Age, that because the fidelity is so much lower, because it's much easier to create assets, like it has all of this content, so much words, so
huge.
much writing, so many side quests. Because if you're not rendering everything in 3D and motion capturing dudes and dudettes, then you can suddenly have huge plots.
And I've been saying this for a while. I mean, you were saying earlier quite rightly, often nostalgia is just bullshit. And you're right, it is. But at the same time, I've always felt quite strongly that one of the best eras for RPGs was 1999-2000. Because, yes, like Dragon Age, the first Dragon Age Origins was a great game. And it had some great little plot lines, some great little stories. But you realise that when you compare that to some of these games, like the fraction of great story is like a fraction.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was saying this ever since fucking Knights of the Old Republic came out. I think that was the first one that took the traditional RPG. I think because that was BioWare dropping kind of two-dimensional RPGs and going three-dimensional, and suddenly the game was like 20 hours rather than 80 hours. And at the time, it felt like I was the only person who was throwing their arms around like one of those men at, say, like car parks where they have the air blown in, and then
The floppy arm man.
floppy arm men.
I think is what they're called.
Yeah. They have a name and I've forgotten it. But yeah,
Windy Willies.
it did feel like
That's not
Invasion of the Body
Let's
Snatchers.
call them Windy Willies.
I was a windy willy billowing around, waving my arms, and everyone else was just talking about how pretty it was.
It was good, but yeah, that's the thing is I think what I've been reminded of is how many pretenders there have been to the throne since, even stuff like, and I get a lot of hack for this, but I've never really been a big fan of some of the Elder Scroll games. I know that Morrowind was apparently very, very good.
I like that you shoot me a sideways glance when you say that.
I don't know.
I won't hear anything against Morrowind.
Yeah.
No, I've never played Morrowind enough to. I played it for like half an hour, but I've never played it enough to have a feel for it, and I get the impression that it was very, very good.
yeah.
However, I thought that Oblivion was just unbelievably bland.
Sure,
and
no, that's accurate.
I got on better with Skyrim,
Yeah.
but I had fun with Skyrim basically when I was just walking around enjoying the scenery.
The thing that was good about Morrowind, in not triggering and turning into fanboy mode, but you watch David Bowie's Labyrinth, and
I do.
I know you do every day, and you watch it, and every scene is like, what's going on now?
Yeah.
That's what Morrowind was. You rounded a corner and you walked into a town, and it was on the back of a beetle, and you went, okay.
Yes.
But it was that for the entire game.
And it took you about half an hour to find the town because you got some weird directions written on a piece of paper attached to a tree.
You know what?
Well, they see that's amazing, and that's something that we haven't really seen in like.
No, because it doesn't sell, because it's extremely hard to get people excited about the idea of wandering around giant mushrooms for ages, but they know what a dragon is, they know what a castle is.
Yeah, no, I get that, but it's the knock-on effect of that is I don't know, like these. You have games like
Incredibly bland games, sure.
yeah, like Oblivion and Skyrim. We've got all these books on bookcases, and you're just like, why would anybody ever read these?
And we were having a
books?
conversation about this in your kitchen where I was saying I'm actually not excited about Pillars of Eternity because I haven't seen a single piece of concept art. No one's been able to tell me why the story is exciting. Everyone's just going, oh, it's made by Obsidian. And I'm going, give me more. Come on, sell me on it. And you did that, but it took you 15 minutes of describing the plot.
That's
to
the
me.
thing. It's difficult, but it's one of these things where you start playing it, and at the moment when I realised, I was like, this wasn't just me pining after a childhood that will never come back in the way I do with many things.
These games were all right.
It was when I was playing Pillars, and I just opened up. And usually, when you search bookcases in an RPG, you just go, "Oh, is there any money on them?"
Yeah.
And then you're like, "No, it's just fucking books. Fuck this."
The books do actually sell quite well.
The books do
They
sell
do. I forgot that. Yeah.
reasonably well, but still, in this, I've actually started looking and going, "Oh, that's a book about this," and I've got an interest now in reading up on like a number of topics and histories within the world because it really does a fantastic job of doing that kind of thing. Of every time you turn a corner, it introduces something new, and whether it's a character.
It's
an
an interesting thing though because like the actual start of the game, as in the first few minutes you spend in Pillars of Eternity, will have you rolling your eyes thinking it's generic fantasy because it literally starts the game. You're on a caravan of wagons. You're an adventurer. You will have created that just beforehand, and your caravan stopped by a tree in the road, and you're deserted in like some creepy mystical ruins, and you're like, "What? Come on, this sounds like a fantasy RPG." And then once you get past that, it starts surprising you almost immediately.
It's a funny thing that video games don't have to do, but like TV does, whereby, TV or music or whatever has to grab you so quickly. Same with books. It's all about that first sentence that makes you read the first paragraph.
Yeah.
Video games is like, shit, you paid your money. We'll make you sit through whatever beginning we choose, and you'll look for the entertainment.
That's what's lovely about Pillars, though, because you expect that. You're ready for it. You're ready for like a tutorial section. You sit there and go, nothing of interest is going to happen for about half an hour.
God, Fallout 2 is my favourite.
And I need to just say, and then loads of interesting stuff happens within immediately. Just
It's just that first few minutes you don't expect it because
it just tricks you, and then it just goes, oh, loads of stuff's happening, and then it's just like this ridiculous cascade of things happen like dominoes until when you finish the exposition, you're just like, you're already, I was like, I'm really interested in this world, and from that point onwards, it's just been a real blast. The only problem I've had actually is I've occasionally had that very old school problem. I had a big problem with Fallout 2 of like knowing what you have to do but not being quite able to work out how to do it, especially in terms of navigating. I've had things where like, well, there's this one bit where basically I'm going into this castle to try and kill this guy. And
as you do, yeah.
As you do. Although obviously it turns out that when you're about to kill him, you suddenly start to realise that actually maybe killing him is a really bad idea, and you kind of get into that problem of being like, oh God, it doesn't matter what I do here. Both of these decisions are shit. Both of these decisions are going to come and bite me at some point. And
I swear, in like
I'm looking forward to it. But,
in 10 years, that's going to be such a trope of like late noughties RPG making of like
everything's great.
You have two choices, but which choice is the good?
But no. This does it much, much better.
Sure,
this does it like because the thing is, we've got into that habit now of grey morality just being like fucking bollocks, like of being like, oh, do you want this boy to die or this woman to die?
And
like,
it's like the Dragon Age thing of do you want to instill the mayor who's a racist but is good at his job, or do you want to take a chance on the
That was
I
pretty
loved that
good.
back then. That was a great.
No, it's fine and it's exciting initially, but like I tell you, when you play, as soon as the birth of text adventures like 80 Days and like Sunless Sea, people from that text adventure background, and the fact that I'm starting to play RPGs made by them now is just blowing all the trad RPGs by BioWare, by Obsidian out of the water. Like in Sunless Sea, the stuff you can do, there's awful stuff you can. The worst stuff I've ever done in a video game that you can do in Sunless Sea, and I did it because I wanted to follow that thread, and it doesn't reward you for it, and you just end it, which then makes you look inwards at yourself, and you're saying, why did I do that? The answer being because it was there, and it's a fascinating thing for a video game to do, rather than this. Well, neither of these options really matter.
No, but the shades here are much more subtle in Pillars, and that's what's really impressed me with it so far is the fact that it's not as simple as being like both of these options are bad. It just leaves you feeling very ambiguous about how things.
I'm still kind of annoyed with myself or a bit confused with myself with the decision I made in the game earlier today. I haven't been able to shake.
And I remembered this happened to me. I remember this happened to me in Baldur's Gate 2, and I'd forgotten about it until today when I was playing, where I got to the end of this bit and I got to the point where I was supposed to kill this guy. And after talking to a few more people, after getting to this essay, I almost was tempted just to, instead of having this encounter, just leave the castle and then just come back like way later when I've had time to think about it. It's like, I'm not going to get any more information, but I just don't
this is the thing.
want to make the choice.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think ambiguity that you're describing is in vogue now. I think it's that kind of, you don't necessarily know what decision to make because you know what? Morality is complicated. Whereas in real life, actually, the way we choose to live our lives, we commit to things. We earnestly believe that, given all the facts, that something is accurate.
No, I know, but that's the problem. It's when, and this is what Pillars is really good at.
Well, sure, but Mass Effect
giving
did it.
you more facts.
Mass Effect did it as well. Mass Effect, they got really good at it by Mass Effect 3. I distinctly remember when you decide to do with the Krogan genophage and you can reverse it, and then it lets you make the decision and it gives you the prompt, and just as you're about to press the button, you get a phone call from someone else giving you more information, or a space phone call, I guess. It was,
Yeah. No, I know. It's just a little bit less, I don't know, it's this thing of being like, somebody asks you to kill someone, you're like, okay, and then you find out that actually they had kind of a bit more motivation to kill that person than you thought they did. And that kind of maybe slightly
But see, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Are you on about the... Did this come from a bear cave? Is a bear cave involved in the story here?
But again, that's a great example of it. It's the fact that it's
we can't.
There's a curveball. There's another curveball. There's another curveball, and it just leaves you in a position where you're just like, I don't know what to do. And the problem is, it's like you've got this guy. You sort of think, well, that information that he's told you, like, if I didn't tell you all the details, doesn't necessarily mean that he's bad. But it might mean that there's going to be more problems down the line. But then this guy who you meet, who is supposedly he's a bad guy, and he's done some bad things stuff. When you actually finally meet him, you're like, he seems pretty with it, and he seems like actually like he knows he's done some bad things, but he really is looking for a way to put that to an end. So, and you're like, do I give this guy a chance or do I give the other guy a chance?
Here's my pitch. For the longest time, including in Fallout, RPGs all came from this D&D basis that you could be good or evil, and that was just the done thing. You could be comedy evil or like Jedi good. And now we're in the sort of like afterglow of that, whereby now everything is grey. There is never committing to any kind of morality. We're not allowed to do it because all decisions are very complicated. And I think after this, we're going to reach a middle ground whereby we can actually have characters who commit to a plausible belief system, but, which is not necessarily tangled up in all kinds of complex stuff.
Well, this is what this actually seems to do pretty well, and the fact that the decisions you make, like the problem is the encounters you're set up in are always kind of a bit fixed and a bit set up to never allow you an easy way out. But it still always gives you the option to just behave like an absolute dick or behave like an absolute saint. But there's just lots more flexibility in between.
We were talking before about the fact that one of the advantages of going back to this older style is that you get a bigger game or a bigger world to explore. That also comes into the way the dialogue's handled as well, because the way it's presented,
way more options if you don't have voice acting. Yeah.
Exactly, or even like when you've got a dialogue window and your characters will be static in the background and there'll be like a circle around the ones that are talking. That's about as far as they go with representing people talking. But it means that you can get into a lot more detail in that dialogue window, and
it really gives you a chance to like interrogate everyone about everything when you've got to make a decision about anything. It gives you a chance to immediately be like, yeah, this is the right thing to do, I'm going to do it. Or to just be like, look, can you just talk to me a bit more about this? Like it does. And also it just allows you to be quite like either just nasty or quite just being like, I just want money. I don't care about this. Like, and Classic. It does remind me of Fallout 2 is quite good at that, of giving you like quite a spread of abilities to like let you play things off each other in different ways. And like, it's a bit like that. But they've also nailed the whole thing of, the big problem in Fallout 2 is that basically if you were stupid, if you had low intelligence, your dialogue was like, you were an idiot, which was really funny at the time. But in this, they've done a nice thing with the skills. So it's like all of the different skills you level up all give you, like, all skills and stats give you different conversation options. And I mean, that's something that most RPGs do, but this one seems to do it like
I feel like they've grown out of that. More modern RPGs have grown out of that because they have these... They don't want to spend time working on dialogue options that only a tenth of people will see. Yeah. So because Pillars knows it's a little bit easier for them to flesh that stuff out.
It does help you sort of shape a sense of character. Yeah. For like with my character, like he's just got like he's really tough. He's not like strong. He's not very good at dealing damage, but he's just very good at taking damage. He's basically the tank for the team. But because of that, because he's just tough looking, it means that like he's generally a really nice, understanding guy, but occasionally, when he needs to, he threatens to kill people. And whenever he threatens to kill people listen. And there's just this thing of like, what's this my guy good at? He's good at threatening people, but he's a nice man.
Oh, I'm so gonna download it when I get.
My guy's got a pet bear, which I really wish featured more heavily in the dialogue. But that's one of the examples when it doesn't. Whenever I'm having an argument, I should have an option that is point at the bear and like just be like, look,
Point at bear.
yeah, we could have an argument and we could pretend that we're gonna have a fight here. But I've got a pet bear that follows me around and is like my trusted companion.
And the companions you get, like so far, though, I've got like a team of 6 now, I think. And every time I've met a character that is like, I've wanted them to come along, I'm actually going to be a bit gutted when I reach the point where I have to then go, well, one person needs to not be with me.
Yeah.
Just because they're all like really interesting. You've got
It
like,
doesn't do the Dragon Age thing where everybody follows you in a camp.
it probably does.
Well, it will do because there's a stronghold thing.
That was a stretch goal actually on Kickstarter. The Kickstarter thing was that you've got a stronghold that you can upgrade over time by spending money, and then you can like it seems like you can do loads of stuff with that. And then underneath the stronghold, you have like a massive dungeon.
Is that the 15 tier one or whatever?
Yeah, that was another like Kickstarter thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, like but.
That seems like a bad place to put a stronghold.
No, but that's the thing is it's tied in really nicely because it talks about this idea of being like, hey, you've got this place, it's yours now, but there's something underneath it. And it's ended up murdering everybody who's ever lived here.
Well, now it's
so maybe you should deal with it, but I mean, you don't have to, whatever.
It's starting to sound like Sunless Sea.
Yeah, it's actually, I've been really impressed by how dark it's been so far. In the fact that, and I always found especially what I loved about games like Baldur's Gate 2 and what I loved about Fallout 2 was maybe because they weren't graphic, because it was all like written descriptions. They could get away with having subject matter, dealing with subject matter, which was really adult and really nasty sometimes.
Or just fading to black. Which
of course.
Which the Fallout games did.
But I don't know how dark and nasty Pillars gets, but there's been bits already which are really grisly.
Horrendous bits, yeah. Like the very first kind of town that you enter immediately like shows you what kind of game that's going to be.
Yeah. It's fascinating, and it is. I'm just enjoying having that thing if you meet characters and you're like, I don't know what to make of you, but come along with me for a journey. Like, it's nice to have an RPG where you're bringing someone along again, and you're not just like, oh, you're the rogue, and at some point, not as in assassin, like as in like in Mass Effect, you're like, all right, you're a badass. There's going to be points in the plot where we end up fighting with each other, but we'll be fine. Whereas in this old style of game, you're like, hey, come along, sure. Because you want to like learn more about them and listen to them more, but you're like, you kind of also know, you're like, at some point, I'm probably going to kill you. Like,
really?
Is that thing of being like, we are opposed and like, you start getting that party bickering where they're like having a go with each other, but it's like not quite bickering. It is like a serious problem, and you're like, yeah, sooner or later this is going to come to a head, and I'm going to side with this guy.
So this ties back into the thing we've been talking about throughout this. If this was a more modern RPG, you can't do that too much because you can't spend time working on a character that some people kill off at a certain stage in the game unless you make a big deal out of it, unless that's a big important moment in the game that defines your characters or whatever, because it's so expensive to do that you can't flesh out characters and work on voice acting if only half the people are going to see them.
The latest
up to a point.
Latest character in my party is basically an Inuit dwarf who has a small it's a dog, but it looks like a really cute like poodle wolf. She's awesome.
Is she a ranger or?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
but yeah.
I actually a highlight of playing Pillars of Eternity so far is I found a dog, and I gave it a pat on the head and was like, "You're my dog now." And then I had a dog in my inventory. You can put him in your There's a pet slot, probably a stretch goal, and then you can drag him into it, and then you've just got a dog that follows you around.
Really?
That's
Oh, I haven't found the pet slot.
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Yeah,
it follows you around rather than you just hold it in your.
But like
knapsack
at first, when I was like, "Oh, where's the dog gone?" It's like, "What the fuck? Inventory? Dog." There we are. Excellent.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I mean, it's this is all obviously based on actually no, this podcast is going up tomorrow, which when the embargo is going to end, so it's fine.
I've actually hadn't. They've been because Bloodborne came out. Probably you've been able to talk about the first 15 hours of the game.
Okay, well, I mean, I haven't even played. I've only played for 5 hours, so I am completely safe in embargo land, and I can say that based on the first 5 hours, it's really, really good. And actually, I'd probably say that the most impressive thing about it is the fact that I've got Pillars of Eternity and Bloodborne, and at the moment, I want to play Pillars of Eternity a bit more, which is really something. Yeah. It's got me, and I'm fascinated to see where it goes with the mad story stuff.
Before the rest of the... Because just nipping in there before the entire internet's talking about it, should we talk just a little bit about impressions of Bloodborne? Because there's just a couple of things I want to say. Because I was around your house doing shut up and sit down stuff, and I think you were in the kitchen making tea. The doorbell rang and I went to get it, and I think I just went, Matt! Matt! Because I knew it was from Sony and I knew it was Bloodborne. And we put it in the
PlayStation box.
4, and then it was so exciting. We put it in and we watched it install.
Wow.
Then we downloaded the patch.
Oh, that patch.
Then you got Shadow Play rigged to... Oh, man, it was great.
Yeah.
But after that... So, I mean, the thing that I do like, and just more than anything, is that From Software have been allowed to do something that, it's clearly Demon Souls again, but also something with just this radically different wrapper on it.
It is. I don't think it is just a wrapper, I'm not sure about it.
There's all kinds of small changes, but I mean, let's be honest. If that game was made by a different developer, the word Dark Souls would be the first 2 words in every review.
Oh, no, of course. Of course.
I mean, there is all kinds of stuff.
But the thing is, because you look at, the way that Demon Souls went on to Dark Souls and Dark Souls to Dark Souls 2, it's, massively derivative.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it does feel and play very differently, and that's my excuse for being shit at it.
I've only played that, the initial demo that went around some of the shows, where it was amazing. If you died, that was the end of your demo.
Yeah.
I say amazing. Very cruel. But the initial impressions for me was that it was just a much more. It encouraged you to be much more aggressive as the player. Instead of holding your shield up, kind of slowly stalking around an enemy, figuring out
it's a lot more.
Wants you to be in there and attacking all the time.
I can't remember where I read this, but I definitely agree with whoever said it was. It's Dark Souls with just a touch of Devil May Cry. Where the dashing and the dodging seems really fast, especially because I've seen videos of people dashing, which is faster than you do it, Matt. Crazy fast.
Yeah, I think
dashes.
I think there's
it's an unlock or something.
Well, a stat thing. I haven't even got to the point where you can unlock your stats yet. I've hardly played it at all. I've played it for about an hour.
But just and actually, we should also mention that I did you were playing it and I was watching, and there was just this slight frisson of you were genuinely upset that you kept dying, and the loading screen.
Though it's mainly because the loading screens are a real
They're crazy.
But I mean, apparently that is going to be patched. People have told me, so that's actually hopefully next time I play it, loading times will not be as bad. But if they don't improve massively, it's going to be a real pain.
Yeah.
And it's a problem because it meant I was playing the game differently. Usually I'd be kind of psyching myself up and going, come on, you can do it. And focusing on just repeating one task again and again and again, because that's what I did with Dark Souls, is that thing of mastery, of being you know what, I'm going to fight this thing and I'm going to fight it again and again and again until it's easy. And that's what you do. But I'm not going to be able to do that if it takes 35 seconds to load every time you die.
You've counted. I remember...
No, I just saw it in the video editing software. I didn't count.
Okay. I distinctly remember a line in the original... A PC Gamer's review of the original Thief when I was growing up. Or a review of Thief 2 or something. But it talked about, just idly questioning whether Thief would have been so scary if the loading times, if you died, hadn't been, I think, 70 seconds.
Which is... The first Thief was terrifying.
I know, but for reasons that we've apparently forgotten. But no, it was also great. Just the art design on Bloodborne is the last thing I want to say about it. The fact that everything is long and spindly and very Victorian. I'm so bored of orcs and elves and trolls and all this stuff. And yeah,
you're gonna love Pillars of Eternity.
I know, right?
It's got orcs. It's got the odd troll I've seen. I'm not sure if.
I mean, I can do that stuff. I'm loosely running a D&D campaign right now. It's...
How are you doing this?
So, I do it. I'm bored of it, but, I'll still play the good games. It's fine. But, yeah, just this Victoriana is so much fun. And the fact that it's not really steampunk either. The fact that they've managed to do this...
Just bloody.
And just resist the steampunk thing. And it's just wheelchairs and spectacles.
I love the setting. And I really like the way that in that kind of initial area, the you're just fighting against like nutters with knives and fire and that, but then you realise that actually they're slightly different. Like what they're holding actually dictates like what kind of an enemy they are, and you need to learn that. But then also they talk, and it's this idea of you go and knock on doors, and people go, "Oh, what are you doing out? You shouldn't be out on a hunt night." And there's this idea that you've just been dropped into this really like. I think there's something a bit more macabre about like having like these streets full of these murderous, horrible people.
No, it's great.
While people are inside having a laugh, know they're out there.
Yeah, there was so creepy when you're fighting these horrible, broken, huge ravens which can't walk, and then you can hear people laughing and knocking glasses over inside.
Yeah.
It's good, and it's just the difference between a great art team being told, draw 20 trolls and just come up with 20 enemies. And it like everything I saw you fight in that game was just a bit interesting, a bit odd. You don't know what's going to be around that corner. It's the Sunless Sea thing.
It is, and the main thing I've noticed so far is down to in Dark Souls 2, it felt like they regularly used large mobs of enemies as difficulty spikes that were a bit cheap. And whenever you faced a lot of enemies at once, it was always kind of like a bit of like, oh, we'll throw this in because it'll be hard. And it was almost always sprung on you a bit. It was almost always like either a trap that you couldn't see and it just happened and you had to deal with it, or it was something that you could see was going to happen when you got to this point, but it was unavoidable nonetheless. It was like you have to go through this final point whether you like it or not. However, in the opening section of Bloodborne, you've got a lot of enemies, but some of them are patrolling and some of them are moving around, and it means that there is this, when you're fighting, there is this sense of aggression, and there is this sense of like, you need to keep fighting, you need to keep being on the attack, and you can't just dawdle around. But also, it doesn't mean you play it in an aggressive way. It means you've actually got to be a lot more cautious about picking your fights.
Sure.
It actually weirdly reminds me loads of Dota, in a weird way of it being like, when people are bad at playing Dota, it's because they don't commit. They either, they kind of half run away and half fight, and they kind of dawdle in the middle, where it's like, with a sword and shield in Dark Souls, you can go into a fight without committing. And I used to do that all the time. You just stand at the edge and you just sort of like stand near it thinking, what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do? And you just try and like be really cautious until you've got a measure for what you're fighting. Whereas in this, it's just like you either avoid fighting by not going near it or running away from it, or if you're going to step in and fight, then you have to just fight. You can't be like, I don't know, should I run away? And I haven't quite got my head around that yet, because it is such a different way to play a game compared to what I'm used to with Dark Souls. But it's very interesting.
It's a fun problem. It means that you don't end up trying to kind of like break the AI as much, or at least, you're not kiting enemies towards areas where you can fight them better. You're not trying to figure out their aggro range. It's just, you are fighting or running away.
Yeah, it makes it a bit looser, I think. And I'll be interested to see how it kind of progresses and continues. But it is, you're right. There is a bit of like Devil May Cry in there, especially because I get the impression there's a lot less weapons and armor to collect. Because
oh man, are they interesting? Like,
but no, that's the thing
the few that I've seen,
the ones you get are incredible.
Yeah, every weapon's got like some weird alternate modes going on.
I saw Rich Stanton posting a GIF earlier, which was like, or a Vine, which was like, one of the weapons is a sword within a sword. So it's like swings this small sword, and then as part of the combo, like clicks this small sword into a larger sword, which looks like it's like a massive scabbard, but is also a sword, and then finishes off the combo with the big sword.
There's a similar weapon with the kind of the big weighty hammer that you can pick. I remember in the demo you could pick through a few different weapon sets, and the way that works is that it is just generally your normal default stance is just a sword, but if you switch it, he reaches back, stabs the sword into this big stone block, and it becomes a big like
massive
two-handed hammer. Yeah.
It's Monster Hunter is what it is. Monster Hunter has always had the two-step weapons. Right. I think Joe Scrabbles was tweeting about this. The press the button and the weapon becomes another weapon, and you work that into combos.
Yeah, that's 100%
Monster Hunter.
It's not just pick out of these two weapons for different fights. It's switch between them in the combat.
That's the Monster Hunter. The gun lance and the something else I forgot.
Well, the new one is like the something power thing. Can't remember. It's fine. But I've got the
Monster Hunter. What's
we
that?
were just talking about Monster
I'm still playing Monster Hunter. I just can't remember words. But in Bloodborne, I've gone for the cane, which is like a cane which you can click and it becomes
so
like
cool.
an ivy style whip. Like from Soul Calibur.
Cool.
It's like a magician's trick cane where you press a button on it and then it all the wire in it goes limp. Sure. All the bits of it fall apart. So then it becomes just like a
serrated like So it basically means it's like very precision stabbing, or it's like swinging it around wildly.
What an idea for a thing.
It's really cool. I think, I mean, what I'm enjoying most about it is not really knowing what's going on. Like, it got inklings of lots of things. Like, there's a creepy doll, and I'm like, yeah, that's probably going to be where you level up. And you've got these gravestones, which, like, yeah, they're probably going to be the different levels in the game. But it's just, I don't know, after playing Dark Souls 2, in which, like, there weren't really many mysteries, and the things that I kind of thought, oh, this is a mystery, just actually ended up just always being mysteries because they weren't mysteries in the first place, if that makes sense.
And I know Dark Souls 2 is not considered.
It's not a terrible game.
I enjoyed specifically being part of that game on launch, and in fact, they might well have been you two in a pub somewhere just chatting about how we'd gone about the initial few areas and where bosses appear and like.
Oh
the best ways to do
yeah,
it.
I remember
like,
that pub. Yeah.
That still is. I think these games in particular are just so much fun to be around that conversation whilst it's happening.
When it's happening, yeah.
I do think Dark Souls 2
What's the
is
mysteries
great.
there?
I just think it's less great than Dark Souls.
I think Dark Souls 2 is good. But, you know, that's like, this is like us having different scales. Like, you know, like, it's an IGN good compared to no, I don't know. Like, it was a good game. I think it was just, it didn't really bring anything new to the table.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
and
Yeah.
this
I mean, I'm actually
definitely
just
does.
being sharing, and if you said it was as good as Dark Souls 1, I would be like, no, it's only good.
It's nowhere near as good as Dark Souls 1. But yeah, Bloodborne, I'm sure I'll be talking about loads more in the future. But yeah, I think so far it's very difficult not to recommend if you've been a fan of that sort of thing in the past.
It's just good. It's creepy. It's so fresh. That Victoriana is just so sweet. Everything is. Although I will say that I'm annoyed that your initial character model has the suspenders are hanging off, which is very fashionable now. You know, like you have the suspenders which are part of your belt, but then they hang loose, and it's like,
Quinns, please tell me this doesn't annoy you.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't annoy me now.
Okay.
Whatever. Now it's a fashionable thing. But if you're setting your game in Victorian times when suspenders were genuinely used to hold your trousers up, then yeah, it does annoy me because your trousers should be falling down.
Fuck that game. Yeah.
It's not like I'm not going to buy it.
Yeah.
But it is stupid.
It looks a lot of fun. Also, like, how cool is it if you're into this type of game, there is a real proper good reason to have a console as well. I know.
There's finally a reason to have a console.
Destiny was that for a lot of people.
Helldivers is really fun. It's really good. And I haven't got the chance. I avoided talking about it today because neither of you two have played it.
Sure.
But Helldivers is really good.
I'll try and play it.
Resogun was really good, but it wasn't the reason to like, you want something a little bit special.
No,
a bit
Bloodborne's
big.
the reason to buy a PS4. Yeah. Helldivers is just the other thing you can play.
But I mean, as you say, Destiny was also very strong. I think a lot of people got the wrong idea of Destiny, like, because it's this weird thing how there is this sort of there's a real cultural clash there that doesn't kind of make sense if you look at it. Like, that if you haven't played Destiny and you just look at the internet, the general consensus is don't play Destiny, that game is shit. Mm-hmm. But then there are also like millions of people who played Destiny and who played it for a very long time. Eventually, lots of people like myself will have now since wandered off from it because there just wasn't enough to do. But after playing it for about 100, 150 hours, which is no small thing. So there is this weird sentiment that Destiny is not a good game.
But only because you walk away. I mean,
before I said it depends if you were into that particular type of thing. It was a great reason to have a console. I commute with someone that plays a lot of Destiny. I get why people
sure.
I don't want to do it.
I'm not saying it to you. I'm just saying, like, you know, if people are, like, you know, thinking about buying a PS4 because they want to play Bloodborne, then
they should for sure get
I think
Destiny
people
as well.
shouldn't write off Destiny, basically.
They should find and see if they have a friend to play Destiny with.
Yes, yeah, that's
I think it's maybe not a case of playing it yet, because I think now we're coming close to the zone where probably in this summer they will release a version of Destiny which has all of the expansions in it. In one, they always do this. It's basically the World of Warcraft model, isn't it? Of being like, well, if you get it now, then you'll get all the other stuff or some of the other stuff.
I'll do it. I just don't know if it'll be this summer, but it might be.
It'll probably be the end of the year. But I don't know.
Christmas Destiny bundle, yeah.
Even if it's just a case of like jumping in the next time there's a big event. But I just say don't write it off, because a lot of people seem to write it off automatically now, which is really odd, because it's like everyone's just. I don't know. Everyone's just overridden the fact that there are millions of people who love it.
It just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It's funny,
I know. Yeah, you're right.
So the general consensus is really grim, even from people like me who've played it for like 250 hours, and I'm like, oh, I don't know.
You're one of them. Jeez,
me and Matt. Yeah, no, me and Matt both.
Okay, so
here we go.
We've got some questions. We've got a question from Count Elmdor. It's probably not a real
Sounds
count.
like a Bloodborne character.
We should hedge our bets though and be polite anyway.
Yes, sir.
How do you greet a count? Is there
Greetings, Count.
I totally just failed my middle class role. I have no idea what. I don't know how you greet a count. My parents failed me. Fuck.
Sounds like the start to a children's joke. How do you greet a count? And then it's got
a joke?
Yes.
5, 6.
And then it's got a joke. Yeah, Chris is right.
Okay, anyway. He says, what's the game you've played the most of ever in hours?
Ever?
Yeah, and was it worth it? So what's the game by hours you've played the most in your life? Was it worth it?
Oh man, my answer is crazy. It's the game I played the most. It's crazy. Are you ready? It was a mod for the original Unreal Tournament called Thievery, which turned Thief into a multiplayer game where like 8 people would play guards and 8 people would play thieves, and it was staggeringly good.
Was this in... Because was Thief in the Unreal Engine?
No, it wasn't. They ported Thief, including the fact like players turning semi-invisible if they're half in light and fully invisible if they're in shadow.
Yeah.
They ported all of that. You know, they ported vine arrows to the Unreal Tournament.
Because I remember there was a ton of really interesting stuff going on in the Unreal Tournament.
Yeah, it was the golden era of modding. It was like Half-Life and Unreal Tournament.
Did the people behind that go on to?
They did. They went on to make. Remember Alien Swarm?
Probably not. I don't know.
That Alien Swarm was the next mod they did, and that got picked up and sold by Valve. It was one of the big selling mods, like Natural Selection for the Half-Life 2, I think.
Oh, was it?
But no, they're a hugely talented mod team, and I played it a lot of time.
How much?
Man, I played it like every night for like a year and a half, just 4 hours. You know, there are other games I've probably played for as long, like, you know, MMOs and stuff, but that's the one that's the biggest in my mind.
Right, yeah.
It's just huge.
I think mine was the biggest in my mind was probably PSO. I don't know how many hours I put into that, but actually that has since been eclipsed by Dota. Like Dota, I put in 900 hours into, which is insane. Yep. It's just actually
it's not,
insane.
Though. The game's bottomless. It's an esport, you know.
I know, but I put 900 hours into it in a period of about a year. Like it's just.
I mean, that's insane.
It's crazy.
I played a lot of Dota, but no, mine isn't particularly surprising. World of Warcraft. And I don't regret it, actually. It's some of the most fun times I've had in video games. It was definitely the only time in my life when I could really manage to fall into a game that hard. But it was good. I ended up having some really close friendships on there, and
yeah, that's if people play World of Warcraft for a long time, it's because they make friends on it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I wasn't even the raiding stuff by the end of it. I was really into the PvP on that game, and played it for the competitive nature of it, similar to why I like Dota 2.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't regret my time with Dota.
All 3 of our answers though are social games. We played them because of the friends we had.
I mean, I've got friends out of it. Like there are people now like people I've started playing Dota 2 with, like are people who are now like really good friends with, and I wouldn't be as good friends with them if not for it. So
that's probably true of my recent answer, because physical card games don't have an answer, but I play a lot of Netrunner, which is a collectible card game, and I've made so many friends through that. The people we go climbing with, Matt, you and me, like that.
A massive crossover of Netrunner and climbing.
That is true. Yeah,
bound to happen.
Okay, let's have a look.
They're like little messages in bottles from James. Hello,
James Thomas says, playing through the original Legend of Zelda, drawing a map of Hyrule as I went. What was the last game you drew a map for?
Oh man, I want to. There was something recently. Zombies Run. I started drawing a map for.
That's insane.
I read a really interesting discussion with the people. So the funny thing is, in Zombies Run, you know, if you go on like a run, the plot line for that run might be like, oh, you're running to New Canton and they don't trust us over there. And so after my first 5 runs, New Canton is over the River Thames, that's to the north.
Right.
And then this block of scientists is to the southeast and everything. And I haven't played it much since then, but I was talking to the people that make Zombies Run, and they were saying after around season 1, they got a continuity expert in to come and read the scripts so they could actually do a map. And the continuity expert didn't want to look at the scripts and said, no, this is impossible. You need to be near 3 mountains, 8 towns, 2 rivers, an old mine, I'm making it up now, but like a spooky mansion, 14 hospitals.
Excellent.
And just like said, I can't help you. Your game is beyond me.
Too much.
What about you guys?
I can't remember, to be honest. I was going to say something like we mentioned Morrowind before, and the way in which that game kind of taught you directions is just something that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, you actually just have to be like, take a left at the bug.
And some of those landmarks were kind of hard to spot. And yeah, I probably will have done it around that game, but not anything recent, which is a shame. It's quite a nice experience to
I can't think
do
of
something
anything.
keep a personal record.
Any excuse for me to write stuff down on paper. I love that stuff. Sunless Sea has a really good thing, of course. It actually nails the sailing thing, whereby like you'll be plotting a really long expedition because you know you'll have food and fuel waiting for you at your destination, which is like some island you've never been to, but you know the directions.
Sure.
And so you sail off, and you don't have a specific line because the numbers aren't there for you, but it's like you're estimating like, if I don't turn around now, I won't be able to make it back to London, which means you commit to that journey. It's like then you don't turn around and you're like, okay, right, I'm either going to find it or die.
It's too late now.
And then you don't find it, and you get back to London by the skin of your teeth or something. Which is a proper sailing thing. I love that.
No, yeah.
It makes sense for that game. No, I kind of disappointed. I can't think of one, to be honest. That's most games you press M and
does that Train Odyssey count? Where you draw?
No, that's what I was thinking as well. I've done that, but that doesn't count because you draw them in the thing. And that's just a bit. Actually, it's fun at first, but after a while, it's just a bit of a pain.
It could be better. It's a cool idea that isn't executed as well as it could be.
Yeah. Next up, we've got like two questions. This one, the first question actually leads on to the second one a bit. Be really brief with this, but someone called Jack Ortiz says how's the best way to get into the industry as a journalist? Lack of context is a big issue in my opinion. Get these sort of questions a lot, and I find it a bit confusing because every time they've been answered like so comprehensively, but people keep asking, which leads me to believe that people either don't like the answers they're given or don't listen to people.
I think this probably isn't the case for Jack, but it's definitely the case that a lot of people will ask you, how do I get in the industry, as a substitute for doing any actual work.
Yeah, I get the impression that is sometimes the case, that people want you to give them like help somehow. Yeah. And it's like, I can't do that. I can't help anyone.
The answer's the same for me as it always is, which is like, if you want to be a games writer, like, are you writing right now?
Yeah.
Like, because if you're not, there is actually, people won't believe this when you tell them, but any editor I know, any editor I have ever worked for, if a new writer sent them copy that was great, they would hire them. They would pay for it immediately. Yeah. Because new editors, actually, there is a dearth of people who do this really well, who turn in good copy. I mean, even great writers will turn in copy that needs to be edited. If you can turn in copy that doesn't need to be edited, that has the images and everything sized, that obeys the word counts and fits on the site because they haven't covered it recently, you'll get a freelance thing.
Yeah, you'll get a freelance gig. That's basically it. You do it. If you're good, then you do it and you get paid. And if you're not good, then you do it and you get good. That's kind of how it works. Is sometimes people just want to work out a way to get a job, and it doesn't work like that. It's like you keep doing it until you're good at it, and then money just happens.
You offered me an interview, so I guess this is a weird thing. This is before we knew each other, but
of course, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the only reason I got the interview was because when something cropped up, I had videos, which is what I was doing to show at that time. And that's it. Because I had no connection with you beforehand. I was like, oh, hey,
no, you're a really good example of that, actually. Because people say, oh, I haven't got any contacts or whatever. I didn't have a clue who Chris Pratt was.
I thought you were going to say I didn't have any contacts when I got in. Instead, I just answered.
Well, I ended up getting in a weird way.
Myself.
I did have contacts when I got in. I ended up getting in through a weird way. But yeah, like I didn't know who you were. We had a job role coming up. We had loads of applications. We looked at stuff. Most of the applications were terrible because it was people who'd gone, oh, I'd love to make videos for a video game website as a job. And then they'd proceeded to borrow a camera or dig a camera out of a cupboard and record their first ever video, pretty much. And it was that thing of being like, this is awful. And of course it's awful. That's fine. But, it's mad that people, I mean, you have to have such incredible natural talent to be able to do that and get anywhere. But you've been plugging away, just making things on YouTube. And I thought, I like this guy. He's got a nice voice. I'm not terribly interested in what he's saying because I'm not interested in this game. But there's just something about watching this man talking about games that is just inherently quite nice. And then I met you, and you were a lovely, polite young chap, and mildly terrified. Pretty poor at making videos, but
took a while.
But we knew that you could, you had the raw ability, and you were already trying. And that's it. But I guess people just say, it's a case of if you're already trying, then just start doing it. The second question was Paul Davis saying, would you ever consider joining up with friends in the industry and making your own gaming site? And the answer is probably not.
Hang on, I kind of did that.
You kind of did do that.
Myself and Paul started Shut Up and Sit Down, which is, of course, a board gaming site, but it had the same principles as... I was working at Rock, Paper, Shotgun before that, and I was following the same principles that they did, which was locate a niche that isn't been filled, and fill it quickly and well, and do it for about a year.
When did you start?
When did I want to?
When did you start?
About 4 years ago. And we started it on Tumblr, and we did of like a video every month, but the videos were huge back then. They were like half-hour TV specials. And they took so much time. It was a result of me and Paul being unemployed. And then we did it for about a year, and then we started looking into ways to
Not
do it
be
for a living.
poor.
Not be poor. And now, thanks to our fabulous, amazing, endlessly amazing donors, we do it for a living.
That's the thing. I mean, I think it's not a case it's impossible. It's just that I think within the board gaming realm, it kind of is, because it's a niche, which is you can kind of, do really well in it. Whereas video games is so incredibly saturated that
I think there are specialities within that. I think I'd be very skeptical about a brand new game site starting right now, unless it's.
But you know what?
something crazy
Actually,
going on.
it doesn't feel that way. But new niches do appear all the time. Like esports is a growing.
That's what I meant. Yeah, so those niches are available. I meant like the kind of a general game site would be so hard to muscle.
And you know what? Speaking of which, my partner Lee Alexander has actually just started Off World Course, which was Board Games Boing Boing's indie game site, but it's now been revived as a feminist site, meaning just a video game site for people who don't necessarily play games.
Yeah.
Which is, again, a niche that popped up and got filled. Like, you just have to be there and fill it with you have to put the time in so that you know the people and have the skills to fill these niches when they come up. But I would absolutely start a gaming site in future, because starting Shut Up and Sit Down has been the most rewarding thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Is it's like if a niche pops up and it's something that is doable and you can get the right people and you get the right resources, but the difficulties is that to get the good people that you want, like sometimes everyone's got jobs, and the funds you need to pull together a team you can't really afford. And also like just starting up a traditional site, as Brad says now, starting up just like a site which is another game site.
That would be mad.
Just suicide. Like, I mean, I managed to support myself as a solo entity and do Daft Souls, which is like as close as I can get to having my own game site. And I'd love to be able to like launch a game site and be like the new Giant Bomb. But you know what? Giant Bomb happened before the economy bombed. And now you're never going to be able to do that anymore. The bottom's fallen out of the advertising business model. But it all ties back to the same stuff that, people like Jack being like, oh, how do I get into it? It's like, there is no in anymore. Like the whole thing's fallen apart. It's a wet paper bag full of holes. Like you find a niche that interests you and you throw yourself into it and you get good at it and you do it. And before you know it, you're storming ahead of everyone else and everyone goes, well, how did they do that? Like, I've never heard of that guy. Why is he so good? I mean, that's what YouTube was, and that's what the next big thing will be. So for the love of God, people, stop asking questions about how to get a job in games journalism and just start doing some. And if you're good, then you'll end up having a job. And if you're not, then you won't. Most people aren't. But anyway, that sounded really harsh, but it's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it categorically is. I'm just racking my brain to think of sites that I would read now that don't exist. If there was a really good, approachable site for text adventures, I would probably read that right now and support it. Because I've got so much out of text adventures recently and I want someone to tell me which ones are good, but the community is quite inward facing.
Yeah.
So if you're listening this right now and have any interest in interactive fiction, there's your niche. Go get a job, get good at it, do it for a year, then ask to be paid.
And if it all goes wrong, it's Quinn's.
If it goes wrong, it's my fault. But also, if there's a beautiful site in a year's time, I will take all the credit. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, but just make it a hobby. That's the thing. Most people say, how do I get a job? And this is like, if you will, honestly, it's like throwing yourself on a sword. If you think, I want to get a job talking or writing about games for a living, it's like, that is suicide. Like, you will drive yourself insane. Like, just do it because you like it as a hobby. And if you ever get good enough, you might be able to consider it as a job. But if you go in aiming to make money, then my God, like, don't. You will, that's hell. That's my idea of hell.
Also, yeah, one final point, I guess. I know a few people that are students that are already writing stuff and managing to kind of get their toe in the door. Like, if you are maybe studying journalism or studying something with the idea of going into games later on, start trying to pitch things and get in contact with people well before you finish your degree or finish whatever kind of education.
That's a classic student mistake, isn't it? The idea that your degree is going to get you a job. It's like absolute nonsense. No, you've got to start getting...
But there's some really good writers right now in the UK that are still students.
Absolutely. Like there are no walls. There are no barriers. People make you think... The only people who want you to think that you need to get in contact with the PRs and stuff until somehow are PRs. Like, you don't need to deal with them at all. It's a false game. Anyway, let's end on a nice question really briefly. I think you guys might know the answer to this one. Says he's kind of getting bored. Ooh. This is from AC Godlyman. Can you suggest any good online co-op games for PC? The expat BFF and I are a bit fed up with Portal. So, good online co-op.
I've been playing so much co-op on PC and it's all been local.
Yeah, that's the thing. that boom has happened.
Matt,
crazy
you
way.
wanted to end on a good question, but I don't know if I have an answer. There must be.
I keep getting told that I should be playing Project Zomboid with my friends right now. That's not something I can really recommend because I haven't managed to yet. But that's my plan for the future.
If you haven't played it yet, it gets tiresome quite quickly. But the original Magicka is fantastic, fun co-op online.
That is true.
Get on Skype, do that.
Yeah, and I wish Helldivers was out for it's only PS4. I'm working so hard, man. I'm thinking so
I
hard.
kind of misread it. I had my pointer over the online bit, and I thought it would just say co-op, but then I reread it. Well, what would you recommend as a co-op thing at the moment? You've been playing something?
Oh, what? Well, I've been having so much fun with Chariot, and I want to do a video with that for you. And Chariot might have online co-op, maybe. And if it does, then you should, for the love of God, play Chariot. What's the person's name? AC
Godlyman.
Well,
Godlyman.
Godlyman. Oh my God, I feel like I'm Q in the James. Godlyman, be very careful with Chariot. It's a good game, and it's just about two people pulling a chariot through a level, and it's all the puzzles has to do with the fact that you're both working together to rope the chariot up incredibly improbable structures, and it's the hardest thing in the world to do.
Basically, it sounds like mountain climbing with wheels.
Yeah, it's mountain climbing with wheels, and it's a lot of it. It is a game where all you ever say is, "Have you got it? Have you got it? Don't drop it! Don't drop it! Do not drop it! I've got it! It's fine! Don't drop it!" And then you hang, and then you let it fall. It's the thing of just letting go. My palms have never been so sweaty. It's really funny.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I look forward to playing it. Okay, well, we will wrap this up this week. It's been an exciting, wobbly, all over the place week. So many games. I feel like I'm just exhausted from the weight of wanting to play Bloodborne and Pillars of Eternity at the same time.
You were so sad. Yeah, yesterday I was talking to you and you're like, "Oh man,
it's
Pillars of Eternity in the same week," and I'm like, "This is the best week."
I know.
What does that
I
matter?
feel terrible because I'm simultaneously aware that it is massive first world problems, but then also it doesn't stop it being something that my brain is really struggling with. When I play Bloodborne, I'm thinking about Pillars of Eternity, and when I play Pillars of Eternity, I'm thinking about Bloodborne. It's like I'm jittery on all over this. I can't be happy with what I've got right now. I'm in that sort of like I cannot.
Those long loading screens.
You have
just
problems.
your mind.
You got problems.
I just
man.
need to forget one of the games exists for a little while.
I can help you out.
Can we do something with a scalpel?
I could take one of those games away with me.
No, you can't do that.
Trying to
No,
get
Matt, what I could
Bloodborne.
do is I could do Bloodborne.
No, thank you for listening.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.